So guys, what is the main problem the Fed has at the moment? The problem is inflation is at a record 40-year high of 6.8%. And the normal way to combat that is you increase interest rates above inflation, and that brings inflation down. That is standard protocol. So that would mean you would have to increase interest rates to 7% at least to bring that inflation down. Now, they can't do that because currently they're paying $350 billion of interest a year, and that's at 0% interest rates. So to get it to 7%, you're talking $2 trillion a year in interest payments, which is more than Medicare, Medicaid, the army, basically everything put together. So they can't do that. They're the biggest. The U.S. government is the biggest debtor in the world, so they need interest rates low. But there's a way out, and the way out is if the Fed buys all the debt, right, which it started to do. Not just started; it's very well into it, as we know. The Fed didn't own really any government debt prior to 2000. Then it started owning about 600 billion. Dot-com crash, not dot-com, sorry, 2008 crash happened. They got to about 2 trillion, 1.5, 2 trillion. And now we're talking 8-9 trillion, right? 8-9 trillion dollars is owned by the Fed of US government debt. When it gets to 100%, theoretically, then it can do interest rates whatever it wants. And the reason is the Fed pays back that interest to the government. So what happens? The government has to pay, let's say 7%. It has to pay that interest rate out, $2 trillion, let's go with, right? Pays it to the Fed, and the Fed immediately takes that and gives it into the TGA, the Treasury General Account, and gives it back to the government. It doesn't make any profit. It just gives it straight back to the government. And so therefore, nothing has really occurred. And so even more than that, we can say the government can come up with a certain amount of interest rates they're comfortable with. So, I don't know, 500, half a trillion, right? We're at 350 now, so half a trillion. They're comfortable with, which would be, I don't know, 10% of real investors and 90% of the Fed. And they can hike interest rates to, above inflation. That is one of the ways the government, if inflation does spiral out of control, can bring it back under control. I don't think it will spiral out of control, and that's only because they didn't do that Build Back Better craziness. Basically, helicopter money, more stimmy checks, more free money, which causes inflation. That's all it is. When you print money, that's what causes inflation. Nothing to do with demand for goods and services. The biggest lies I've ever seen is the demand for goods and services. Nothing to do with that. Okay, so thank you. That's one way to get out of it. Is the Fed owns everything, all the government debt, which I'm sure they're planning to do.